Sir Kannan Gopalakrishnan. He was working as a senior architect at Engineering Design Research Centre, L&T Construction, India's largest construction company. He's also worked on projects ranging from institutional buildings to international airports, apartment complexes to aircraft hangars. He's also attended 3 international conferences and 2 national conferences, and has also presented technical papers at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, and the MSRIT, Bangalore. He's also won the national championship at Archaman at the India's largest architecture quiz. Sir Kannan Gopalakrishnan currently runs a design firm, Habitat Design Studio, and he is also a visiting faculty at the renowned architecture schools in Tamil Nadu.
Welcome to your GC lecture series. This is AR 6502, History of Architecture and Culture 5. In Unit 2, we are reviewing industrialization. This is lecture number 14. And if you remember in lecture number 13, we saw Art Nouveau, and today we will be looking at one of the most important proponents of Art Nouveau style, Victor Horta. Victor Horta was a leading architect and designer of Art Nouveau movement. His style inspired a lot of modernist artists all over Europe. He famously influenced the aesthetic ideals of the then avant-garde group of artists in Belgium, such as Le Vint and La Libre Aesthetique. After studying drawing, he also studied textiles and architecture. He studied at the Fine Arts Academy in Ghent. He established his own practice in the capital, Brussels. Out of all Victor Horta's buildings and houses, 4 of them are included in the list of World Heritage Sites by UNESCO. How famous is that? By 1885, Victor Horta was already starting to work on his own firm, and he was commissioned to design 3 houses which were built in that particular year. In 1885, he was hardly 24 years old. In that same year, he also joined the Central Society of Belgian Architecture. The next few years, what Horta did was, all young architects do, Horta did exactly what all young architects do at that particular age. He started attempting all public competitions that came along his way, and he also won a lot of prizes in them. Primarily focused on the curvature of his designs, which got him the little edge over all his other contenders and competitors, because everybody else were either doing Gothic revival architecture or neoclassical architecture, while Victor Horta was doing the thing differently. He focused on curvature of his designs, believed that all the designs and forms that he produced were highly practical and not just pure artistic affectation. He does not believe in pure artistic creation. He said that even the art was to perform a certain function. He introduced Art Nouveau into architecture, but Art Nouveau was introduced to him in an exhibition 1892. That is where Horta was inspired to do Art Nouveau in architecture. Immediately after 1892 exhibition in 1893, he was commissioned to design a house for Professor Émilie Tassel. He transfused all the ideas that he recently got from the Art Nouveau exhibition in 1892, and he transfused everything into this project. This design had a groundbreaking semi-open floor plan, because floor plan was pretty much very ancient in that particular point of time. Even though they could change all the visual elements and the aesthetics and everything, but the essence of the building is the floor plan, which still remained classical or neoclassical at that particular point of time. That is what Victor Horta changed in this building primarily. He incorporated a curvilinear botanical form inside the iron structure. It was later described as the biomorphic whiplash. If you remember, we studied whiplash in the previous lecture. I hope you remember what we studied about whiplash. Ornate and elaborate designs in natural lighting were concealed behind a stone facade. The stone facade is what you see in the picture in front of you. So, natural lighting were concealed behind a stone facade to harmonize the building with the more rigid houses next door. What Victor Horta could do was, he was able to make an open floor plan, he was able to include biomorphic whiplashes and all that, but what Horta could not do was to change the elevation drastically. because in that same street there were a lot of other buildings which were very rigid in elevation. So, his elevation needs to necessarily correlate and comprehend with the neighboring houses. So, that is what Victor Horta did. Since then, after his completion of this building, it has been recognized as the first appearance of Art Nouveau in architecture. Take a look at the interior of the building. We can remember this sketch from the previous episode also. We saw this sketch as the famous example of Art Nouveau. This was indeed designed by Victor Horta. I was even showing you about how the flooring, the straight riser, the railings, column base, column capitals, even the lamps and everything reflected Victor Horta's idea of Art Nouveau. These are some more pictures of the building, more pictures of Victor Horta's designs. The only thing which Victor Horta could do in elevation in the Art Nouveau style was to design the railing as per his ideas, the column bases and capitals, window grills, the grills of the door. These were the only things which Victor Horta was able to do as per Art Nouveau style, because all the other things must correspond to the elevation of the street, which looked somewhat like this. And if you look at the complete street, the entire street looks traditional, and it has to, if he designed a Art Nouveau building here, this building would not correlate with the other streets and it will stand out entirely. That will disturb the entire harmony of the whole street. So, he kept in mind the harmony of the whole street, and he worked towards a greater goal in achieving overall harmony in the neighborhood by designing the Tassel Hotel elevation in accordance with the elevation that was existing in the street. Maison Antique was one of the first townhouses ever built by Victor Horta. This dwelling was already innovative for its application of a novel Art Nouveau decorative scheme, but did not include any references to other historical styles. He had Art Nouveau application in this building, but the problem with Maison Antique, but what makes Maison Antique not so famous as the Hotel Tassel is the floor plan, because the whole floor plan and the spatial configuration of Maison Antique remained rather traditional instead of being contemporary in what Horta designed in Hotel Tassel. Hotel Tassel is a townhouse. It is called hotel, but hotel actually means a townhouse in that language. Townhouse built by Victor Horta in Brussels for the Belgian scientist and professor Emily Tassel. It is generally considered as the first true Art Nouveau building. We saw this, and together with this and other three buildings, including his own house, is listed in UNESCO World Heritage Site buildings. Let's take a look at another interior view of the hotel. If you look at the plan of the building, on the deep and narrow building plot, the rooms were organized according to traditional scheme used in most Belgian townhouses at that particular point of time. It considered a suite of rooms on the left hand side of the building plot, flanked by a rather narrow entrance hall with stairs and a corridor that led to a small garden at the back. From the three room suite, only the first and the last room had windows, which made the middle room pretty much gloomy. This is what the plan looked like. These were the original drawings which were published in 1895. In the project, Horta definitely broke with this traditional scheme. This traditional scheme of doing the corridor and then the rooms on one side was totally broken. The fact that he built a house consists of three different parts was the most intriguing part. The first part is to do two conventional buildings in brick, one in brick and one in natural stone, on one side of the street and on the other side of the garden. So, he designed two buildings, one near the street and one near the garden, one with brick and one with stone. So, these were linked by a steel structure which was covered by glass on the top. So, the entire steel structure in the middle was acting like a composition in such a way that it contains staircases and landings that connect at different levels and different rooms. So, this is the connective part of the whole hotel. Through the glass roof, it functions as a light shaft and brings natural light to the center of the building. So, the middle room, which was traditionally gloomy, was now no longer gloomy because of the central staircase and glass element, which brings in a lot of light to the room. These were some of the sketches which Hotter tried to get before he perfected his design. And look at the inspirations. He got inspirations from floral motifs, animal insect forms, feathers, butterflies, plant elements. He even tried out a tendril kind of a thing, which he later thought was a little too much, so he abandoned this tendril idea. So, the front part of the house could also be used for receiving guests. Hotta made the maximum of his skills as an interior designer in this part of the house. He also designed every single detail. He not only just gave the floor plans and just say, okay, go ahead and build it, I am not going to do anything after this. He also did the entire interiors, the woodwork, panels, stained glass windows, right from door knobs, door handles, the mosaic flooring, all the furnishing, everything. Hotta did the complete ensemble. He succeeded in integrating the lavish decor without masking the general architectural structures. The problem with regular Art Nouveau people was they make large lavish decorating, which kind of makes the entire structure also doesn't look like it is actually structured. The column will no longer look like a column, the window will no longer look like a window after they have done with. So, but what Hotta did was he used the lavish decoration, yes, but he used it without masking the general architectural structures. For this only reason, the pure architectural innovations were not largely followed by other architects. Most other Art Nouveau buildings in Belgium and other European countries were actually inspired by Hotta's whiplash decorative styles. This is a section of the building. Next, we will look at another interesting building, the Hotta Museum. It is now called as Hotta Museum. It is dedicated to the work and the life of Belgian art and architect, Art Nouveau architect Victor Hotta and his time period, his architectural time period. The museum is housed in Hotta's former house and atelier. The museum is housed in Hotta's former house and atelier, Maison and Atelier Hotta, which he designed in 1898. He designed it in again Brussels municipality of Saint-Gilles. In the splendid Art Nouveau interiors, there is a permanent display of all the furniture, utensils and the art objects that were designed by Hotta and his contemporaries and his friends, as well as documents related to his entire life and his entire time. So, that is this museum, and this is the plan of the Hotta Museum. On the ground floor, we have the parlor and the cloakroom, the main staircase which leads to all the other spaces. We have the cellar, kitchen here, and this is the servants' staircase. And the next building we have the cloakroom, which is for the office, and then he had a bookshop. On the bel etage level, which is the street level, this is the music room, the main staircase again, dining room, salon. This is the same 7 staircase which keeps going up. And on the office part, this is the Hotta salon and waiting lounge. This is Hotta's office. On the first floor, which is actually second floor from the street level, we have the salon, cloakroom, main staircase. We have the bedrooms, a front dressing room area near the bedroom, and the bathrooms with 7 staircases running straight through to service all the spaces. And here in the office space, we have a library and an office for museum staff. On the second floor, which is the third level from the street, he has the guest room, main staircase. This is Simon Hotta's room, a winter terrace overlooking the garden, regular terrace with the 7 staircases in between. And above the studio, he has the attic and some office space for the museum staff. The first thing that stands in the facade is the clear distinction the architect made in both house and studio elevation. there is a house and the studio which is existing parallelly if you look at it in the plan. Hota made sure that people should know which is the house and which is the elevation. So, he clearly made the distinction. In both facades, the proposal also raises asymmetrical compositions. The entire composition itself is a rebellion against the time in which he was living in. However, both buildings maintain an ongoing dialogue in terms of composition, form, proportion of openings, materials, the colors. They integrate themselves smoothly with other properties of the street. This is the section of the office, and the grey part is the section of the house. The colored part is the section of the office, in which you can see the different levels, the ground level, street level, first, second and third attic levels. The studio's facade was developed in 3 levels, the first 2 more massive than the third. Taking advantage of the structural strength of steel, he could arrange discontinuity between the openings of the first and second level. This was in stark contrast with the neighboring houses, wherein the space between the windows and the columns are repeated on every floor. That did not happen in Hota's building. The studio's last level is basically completely glassed, framed by thin ochre colored metal columns. Here is another section through the house. You can clearly see the different levels and the staircase which keeps going throughout the building. The facade is completely covered in stone, and it highlights the work done in the metal and balconies. So, make contrasting materials and make sure that one does not overpower the other. One must exemplify the use of the other thing. It is supported by a steel beam that runs along the first level. The quality of the detail and the dialogue between the stone and metal elements that make up both facades is remarkable, and they often conceal specific and mundane functions behind their elaborate stylistic forms. Let us take a look at how the interior of the house look. Now, it has been modified several times, and it reflects the life of the architect and the life and work of architect, including his personal needs and including his divorce and everything. So, there has been a lot of changes that has happened on the interior. In 1919, what Hota did was he separated the 2 buildings and he sold them to 2 different people. The house and studio are divided into 5 levels: a basement, ground floor, the piano nobile or the second level from the street, and the first and second floors or the third and fourth level from the street. This difference in level is because in each country the floor numbering is different. In India, we call ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor, etc. Whereas in some European countries, they don't have a concept of ground floor. The ground floor is actually called the first level for them. So, sometimes if there is a mezzanine, they also count that as a floor in some countries. In some countries, they don't count mezzanines. And so, all these variations happen only because of local levels, local ways in which you term different names of the different street level. But nevertheless, it has a 5 level plan. These levels exchange within their mezzanines or the semi levels, which are placed around the central staircases. Overall, the house is much brighter and has warmer colors than other contemporary houses. We were talking about the contemporary houses earlier, in which the first and the third rooms get light and the middle room always it's dingy and it doesn't have light. But Hota innovated the whole use of the staircase thing, in which the entire house is brighter and has warmer colors now. He used electric lighting to replace the use of glass, which became very dirty. So, he used darker colors on the walls too. This is the street elevation in which he designed his house and studio. You would have studied in principles of architecture about the rhythmic composition of street elevations. Each building here in this elevation has 2 parts. The A part, which is small and contains the entrance, the B part, which is slightly bigger, which contains the balconies and large windows. So, each house definitely has a part and a B part. Even in this house, the A part is small, which houses the entrance. Again, the B part is the one with larger windows and balconies and other stuff. So, he saw this entire street elevation, and then he made a sketch of what that sketch probably looked like this. He studied it completely. He analyzed what has happened in this kind of architecture, and then when he was building his house and studio, he did not do anything that was out of this frame, otherwise this would look totally incongruous with what is happening here. So, he used the same A-B format for his house separately and A-B format separately for his studio, precisely because he wanted house and the studio to be two different entities, and even the elevation, it looks very different. The studio is little more open, has large amount of openings, and it is smaller in height, whereas the house is little more grandiose and taller. In the house again, he uses the two different kinds of thing, where he has the main entrance over here and the balconies and large windows and other things over on the B portion, similar to his studio where he has the door over here in the A portion and a very wide window and other things in B portion. There is a lesson here for us, ladies and gentlemen. However great we are accomplished, however accomplished we are in the style that we are building, we may be the key proponents of a famous style and we may be regarded as the pioneers of that style, but we should never forget all the lessons that we have learned, because the lesson teaches that if you build something out of the ordinary, if you build something that is incongruous with the others, this will stick out like a sore finger, and anything that sticks out gets beaten up. There is this famous Chinese proverb, the nail that sticks out gets beaten first. Just like in wooden joinery, anything that does not go well with what is happening around, anything that does not gel with the surrounding things is definitely not good, not in art, not in culture, not in any other format of architecture or art. Hota understood this intense, deep concept. Even though he was the pioneer in Art Nouveau movement, he kept the Art Nouveau style to a very minimum without compromising on his ideals. See, even in this building, he tried to use a lot of Art Nouveau elements with the roof, with the window opening, because all the other windows were either segmental or flat or semicircular, whereas here is where he has tried out a different form of arch in his building, and there is a stark contrast of this building with all the other buildings. Yes, the contrast is clearly seen. It is clearly seen that this is Hota's new design in Art Nouveau architecture, but it does not stick out like a sore thumb. It does not stick out like a piece of iron, a nail which is sticking out. It is incongruous. It is in unison with the rest of the elevation. Look at how Hota has paid attention to how the building must look from the street, because the house not only belongs to Hota, house not only belongs to the person who is looking at it from a Art Nouveau point of view, the house also belongs to the street. If a person is walking on the street, he has to feel that he is a part of the street and the building has to belong there. So, this is what made Hota use the same rhythm patterns of A and B in his building too, but he has used it in his own idea. He has used his own concept of Art Nouveau, infused that into the rhythmic A and B, and then produced this. This is the genius of Victor Hota. And now it is time to quickly look at what we learned in this episode. We saw the life and works of the famous architect Victor Hota. We understood his contribution towards the Art Nouveau style. We understood his works such as Hotel Tassel, his own house, Maison Hota. With this, you should be able to answer the following questions. Explain the early life and situations that led Hota to become an accomplished architect. Explain the Tassel Hotel with open planning and rendering in Art Nouveau style with relevant sketches. Explain the whiplash ideology in Hota's designs. How sensible was Hota to the surrounding architecture and the street? I look forward to meeting you with more Art Nouveau examples and more Art Nouveau architects on the other side of this episode. So, till then, thank you.